I head up ADAPT's data, and I was really excited to construct this presentation for you this morning because there is a synergy between your world in digital and mine in data. You have an incredible focus on building a data-driven organization. As for me, day-to-day as a data scientist, my role has changed phenomenally with digital technologies. The way that I now capture, analyze, visualize, and create stories around data has changed significantly. And today we're going to take your survey data and create a story around it. First, we'll look at some of your colleagues across departments and why digital delivery is important to them. Then we're going to look at you, in particular some of your challenges because they're phenomenally interesting. Then we're going to look at some of the digital metrics that underpin the EVR and what are the levers some people pull to move towards becoming an exponential enterprise. Sounds good, right? Let's have a look. When we talk to some of your colleagues across departments, your Chief Financial Officer's #1 transformation initiative is to increase dashboard usage. That is so cool. It's cool because it's a shift away from working in spreadsheets, and when you combine it with the digitization of financial reporting, it signifies a shift towards commercial analytics. It's a curiosity about trends in data and how finance can look at ways to fund future growth and improve operational effectiveness. In the data world and in the digital world, we need to help them translate that curiosity into business value. When we talk to your heads of HR, they say the biggest barrier to employee experience is old ways of working. And when we think about digital adoption and moving into new ways of working and navigating that change landscape, we always got to think about it from the end user's perspective. Why are we changing? It's that classic, what's in it for me? Then we have people in my world that head up data, and we have an increased focus on improving customer experience because as more people communicate with us through digital channels, it gives people like me more data to work with. Our biggest gap when it comes to skills is not within our department. It's the limited end user skill base. Sure, some of that's their ability to understand maths and statistics, but some of it's also them being able to use the right tools to drive data-driven decisions. I will say quickly while I have this slide up, that in terms of the statistics my team does, this is so easy. Finding ways of alignment and cross-pollination in different departments is really simple, which makes this slide a bit perplexing. And as Jim prefaced for you before, the competing business priorities comes up again and again and in between very diverse departments because we are increasingly operating in silos. And I wish that I had some sort of silver bullet statistic or mathematical model that could show you how to fix this problem. But people are complicated, and organizations differ phenomenally in their culture. What you're doing today is actually a good step in the right direction. We have some great case studies for people that have navigated very difficult change in complex organizations. I encourage you to listen and think about what are the concepts that are portable into your organization. Let's keep with this internal focus for a moment and have a look at some of your barriers to employee experience. So this is called a Sankey chart. I'm going to break my own rule here. I tell my team, limit them to 5. Otherwise, those lines that denote change get really confusing. I had to do 6 this time. Can you see why? So the 1 and 6 have completely switched between years. Last year, increasing digital fatigue and burnout was your #1 barrier to employee experience. And that makes sense because we were still working our ways out of COVID. There were more intense skill shortages, and our flexibility had really shifted towards the employee. It's come back a bit now. And what I hear a lot from different corporate organizations is the balance is that 2 to 3 days a week, where people can do focused work from home, and that we build the right collaboration spaces in the office for people to come together, work, and learn off each other. The inability to make data-driven decisions has shot up significantly. And I'm reminded of a book that really shaped my career. It's by a guy called David McCandless, and it's called Information is Beautiful. And two of the key takeaways that are relevant for the digital audience is clarity and context. Clarity because what I hear from a lot of people is I'm drowning in information. So what we've got to try and do is strip it back and focus on the few clear metrics that can drive behaviors in our organization. And with context, it's a lot of the information that your organizations deal with is descriptive. It's described what's happened in the past. Some of it's predictive, not necessarily looking at the future, but looking at trends in information. Very little of it is prescriptive. And let me qualify that for you. The term is data-driven, which means that data should guide the decision-making process. It should not define or dictate it. So we've got to think about how we provide people information that helps them make the right decisions at the right time and for the right reasons. You can see that your second top year on year is difficulty in making changes to the way work's done. And that matches up really nicely with what the HR leaders are saying as well. But let's stick with that data component for a second and have a look at some of your barriers to customer experience. So I've highlighted this one red because really everything else flows on from that. When you have inconsistencies across platforms when it comes to data, or problems with data definitions across different departments, having a consistent customer experience through your physical and digital channels is really difficult. And when you have legacy embedded that causes some of this disparate nature, finding the balance between experience and security is arduous. You also can't personalize, and people have generally poor website or poor application experience. So what have we seen so far? We've seen that we're having issues with old ways of working and that there are disjointed systems. And a metric that really underpins the EVR quite substantially is digitisation, because it's a shift away from legacy and a shift towards new ways of working. So we asked you across a range of systems and a range of processes how digitized those are. And what we do is we took a raw average, and what we can see is across all of us, we're about halfway through that journey, 46% to be precise. And when we sort you from the least to the most, that's how you distribute. And it's a lovely normal distribution with that big box in the middle where half of you are. The reason why we chose this visualization is because we can group respondents. When we group respondents, we can see what changes between groups and what common feature sets there are within each group. So what we did is we had a look at people that have high degrees of digitization. And we ran the data, including all your survey information, through the same machine learning models that the EVR is built on. And it came up with a lovely decision tree, which is this. A word of caution, if you're not used to looking at decision trees, they can look really overwhelming. But if you take the time to talk through them, they're actually very effective tools to use for management decision making. I'll show you. Let's start on that far left-hand side. Do you have a high degree of workflows automated? If no, then you have low digitization. And there's a little bit of chicken and egg there because you need a high degree of digitization to automate workflows. But something that's not described in this, which is an interesting statistical point, is people that have moderate degrees of digitization, when they start focusing on workflows, freeing people up from the mundane and making work more interesting, they tend to move to that upper category. Once we're freeing up people and making work more human, it goes to the next node. What is the ability of the staff to use the digital tools available to them to perform in their role? If no, low digitization. If yes, then you move up. And it comes to the applications which are connected. And that's incredibly interesting because the first 2 points, workflows and digital fitness, can happen within a department. When we start to scale things through APIs, we're looking at wider digital transformations and connecting people and scaling cross-functional knowledge. Then it comes to the last point. What is the ability of the senior leadership to incentivize it, to have digital-first mindsets and to reward good digital behaviors. And the results from that you can see are pretty self-explanatory. When I saw this decision tree for the first time, it perplexed me a little bit, because normally with binary variables, you get a lot more branches that come off, where some people are low, some people are high. This you have to go through every single stage in order to be predicted as a highly digitized organization. And this model predicts at 82%. It's very good for business statistics. We see something interesting when we quartile people for digitization and the deployment of AI-based technologies. So people with high digitization, they are much more likely to have deployed ML. Because when you have a huge amount of data that's caused through using digital technologies, you need a bit of extra grunt to process it. And that's why with the moderately digitized people, their biggest quartile, people starting to pilot that technology. When we look at smart agents and chatbots, people more digitized have deployed those, and I love chatbots. It's a great way, especially when combined with things like RPA, to start to automate journeys and get new information to understand how customers like to interact with us. A company that does this really well is Ubank. They were one of the first organizations that did a home loan chatbot to help people through their home loan process. They also, and not a lot of people know this, had an internal-facing chatbot that when things were escalated to the point where it had to have someone on the phone, the chatbot internally was helping guide the person on the phone to the right answer. And this is something that you now see scaling out through NAB as well, where they've just released a chatbot service to help the internal staff with their IT service inquiries, saving their service desk an enormous amount of time. So when we think about exponential organizations, in order to be truly exponential, you need the right mindsets and you need the right behaviors. And two critical metrics that underpin that are digital savviness and digital fitness. So digital savviness is an executive layer competency where they see value in digital technologies. The fitness deals with the ability for every employee across the organization to use technology to perform in their role. And if we plot it on a scatter plot, this is what it looks like. And I'm not going to go through this too much. We've got a lot of research that underpins what these different stages are and what you do to move through stages. What we're going to focus on is people in that exponential value category. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're exponential enterprises. What it means is they've got the right combination between how leadership values technology and people's ability to use the technology to become exponential. And if we have a look particularly at the digital savviness side, you can see that people with high savviness are more effective in building out a digital culture. It's more interesting at that low level of savviness where you have only 2% are effective, and really that's an outlier case. So what we want to do is spend time with the most senior leadership to develop different ways and mechanisms to encourage digital ways of working. People with high degrees of digital savviness are more effective at linking behaviors to outcomes. So I go back to that point that I said before about clarity, having a clear metric that we're working towards, and then if we're using data to drive it, having a list of behaviors where it's easy to tie performance in those to achieving that metric. We also see that at the digital fitness layer, people are more likely to struggle with non-scalable communication methods like email if there's low digital fitness. And scalability is twofold. When you have a lot of information going through things like email, you have too much information coming at you, and it's hard to scale to find the information that's important. Scalability also deals with how we connect people through different areas of the organization to scale knowledge outwards. Don Price talks about this really well, and how Atlassian has built out different cross-functional teams to encourage cross-pollination. And really, when you think back to that competing business priorities piece, one of the things that Atlassian does really well is they focus on connecting teams that deal with each other a lot, that have high level of frictions. And a lot of the time it happens because it's a transactional relationship. For example, in the digital world, it might be the security team that you need a lot of, but you see a barrier. What Atlassian encourages people to do is to then get the digital team to go proactively to the security team. How can we help you with something? What's happening with the login experience with the website? Can we help make this seamless? Because when you start to give back and develop a two-way relationship, and it builds out a network of value add throughout the organization, it doesn't remove all the competing business priorities, but it reduces a lot of the frictions that happen a lot of the time. So what have we seen during the presentation that you can take away with you? We've given you opportunities to collaborate, showing how different parts of the business have focuses on digital technology. We've looked at the importance of education, both at that senior level of the organization, as well as the general digital skills of employees and the role that that plays in transformations and new ways of working. We have identified the ability to integrate data to develop a unified view of customer and scale knowledge across the enterprise. We've also had a look at how we can automate different processes, freeing up people from the mundane that improves employee experience. And there's significant research as well that improving employee experience translates into a better customer experience.